And welcome back to another Wednesday Night Fightback. And tonight we're going to be talking about something very controversial. Isn't that right, William?
It is very controversial. We're going to talk about these attempts to prevent people from travelling, and in particular with their cars, into certain parts of cities. You now have ULEZ zones, and increasingly the major cities, Sheffield, Oxford, and Newcastle, Glasgow, are planning these zones where people can't drive in. If they do drive in, they're under surveillance. And they're even separating different parts of cities. That was in Canterbury. They're sort of, separating the city into little zones, and you can't travel from one to another. There's been stories, if the plans are implemented, that people would have to drive literally 12 miles or something to get literally a mile into the next zone. Fabulous. So what do you think about this? What's your reaction, Michael, to this?
Well, I have to say, I think it's another outrage. I mean, as if Britain isn't, immobile enough as it is. I mean, if you're living in Hartlepool, I don't know why I always pick on Hartlepool, but if you're in Hartlepool, the idea that you're going to go down to London is anyway incredibly expensive. And then if you drive your old banger, because you probably haven't bought yourself an electric car, and they're going to charge you another £12.50 a day, it's just providing yet more gated communities ideas, sealing London off. And I think that is a tremendously bad, destructive idea at a time when, if anything, we should be trying to build the nation, rebuild the nation, rather than drive it further apart in this way. I think it's a dreadful idea.
Well, let me just go into it, because you did a very amusing piece, very clever piece, where you say that if it's London's policy to charge people to drive in, you should charge people for getting out. And you said at one point that why don't we, if you're going to do that, why don't you charge people 20 quid from exiting the M25 and getting out to Hertfordshire or Bucks or whatever into their own counties? And what's good for the goose is good for the gander. You make a fair point, really.
Well, the point is that you've got to, it just reminds me that, if you go back to medieval times, you would have cities and you would have boroughs which would have their own, really sort of policies about who's going to be coming in, who's not going to be coming in, who's going to be taxed, who's not going to be taxed. This is a tremendously bad idea. It disrupted the internal trade of the country. And then if you go over to France, you look in the 18th century, internal trade was absolutely killed by all these domestic tariffs. And that's what's threatening here. So I don't really want to tax London. Actually, I do really want to tax London.
No.
But the point is that the rest of us have got to have some way of bringing to light to people's, attention, what's really happening here. So, okay, you're going to do that. We're going to do it to you too. How does that feel?
Yeah.
And well, frankly, 20 quid a day out of London, enough of that could fix a lot of the North's transport problems.
Yeah, but I think it's based on, I mean, they're misunderstanding what a city is. And the city has a hinterland. It's actually a very, very large ecosystem. If you look at things like, the whole travel to work area for London, that's the city, really. And actually the attempt to sort of cut it off is not understanding what it is. It's not in resource terms. It's not only just commuting and people traveling in cars. Look at the resource, look at, water or anything like that. It's one thing. And to think about it in terms of, right, we'll tax people from the hinterland coming into the city is misinterpreting what it is. Well, I'm just going to make one plea though, Michael, because as a town planner, I do think there is a happy medium. There is a sort of resolution. Some of what is proposed in terms of neighbourhoods is actually we would argue, is quite normal town planning desiderata. The sort of things you're trying to achieve. Give you an example. So in Barcelona, you've got these super blocks. It's a grid pattern from the 1800s. And what they've done and what they plan is to basically get 9 blocks and reduce the amount of traffic going into it. It's a similar thing to what is proposed here. And I would say that most urban planners and most architects and other people would have sympathy for that. And just to play devil's advocate, what they would argue is that if you do that rationally, you're not trying to sort of stop citizens going anywhere, but if you do it rationally, you will end up with better public realm, more public open space for pedestrians, higher footfall, and probably higher revenue.
No.
You don't buy it?
No, absolutely not. I mean, particularly when you look at where they're trying to do it in Oxford. I mean, you're not going to settle up the regions in Oxford so they're all going to have similar cultural advantages. I mean, it's absolutely impossible. It goes against the whole of history. You're going to have the people in the centre, and then you're going to have the plebs in Blackbird Leeds. And the effect of a 15-minute city will mean that, you know, the plebs in Blackbird Leeds are never going to be able to get to North Oxford, or are going to be hugely discouraged. It's bad, bad, bad. You're going against history.
I do think you're very wise to flag up the sort of social and the social class element in this, because I do smell a rat here. I think you're right to point it out. What do they really want? They want to have a gated community.
They do, and that's bad. It's bad for Britain, bad for Oxford, and we should work on plans to stop them. Also, it's taxation without representation, William, which is a bad thing.
It is. Well, I've tried to make the counter case and I've failed. So there you go.
Well, we'll have another try later. Bye.
Thanks very much. Take care.